just a visitor?
I'm just a visitor.
Just a visitor, okay. I'm Frank Barron.
I'm Tina. I was here last week.
Tina, what's your last name?
Sorrenti.
Nice to meet you. I was just entertaining everybody a little bit while
Lovely.
What would you share with us about the citizenship that you live? Would you share?
I am so sorry.
Remember I saw you outside the other day?
Would you, sir?
Okay. That might be something that'd be interesting to doing. Got some good programs.
Okay. Just suggesting that I just tell you that I'm a member of the Lexington County Community Emergency Response Team, and it's really a first responder group with people scattered all over Lexington County for the purpose of if something happens and you can get there first, you can do something, you know, to help. It could be an accident, it could be something to do with fire or chemicals, or I mean, we've had some training in many different areas of. It could be a storm, or it could be injuries or whatever. If we are issued a bag of some equipment, we can add to that equipment. Some of us have additional training. I was an emergency medical technician at one time, and to give you an example of two things that happened in the last 2 months, I was assigned to be the next to the last post at 5K that the Sheriff's Department sponsored. Right after me was the goal line. So the people were running, they were getting pretty tired by the time they got to me. And one gentleman was staggering as he came by me, and we were reporting this to the headquarters. And I said, well, he just passed me, he's staggering, he looks like he's going to fall. So I got up and I got to him first. Well, he fell off the road, fortunately not on the pavement, and he fell. I got to him, and you know, things that I checked were like he was sweating very nicely. I say that meaning if a person is hot and not sweating, then they're having a heat stroke. And they can die very quickly because they can't lower the body temperature. Sweating keeps our body temperature down. So he was sweating just like he should. His pulse was very steady and strong, and not an abnormal feeling pulse, you know. And he was coherent and speaking to me, so that I knew that you know, he knew what was going on. And then I realized this other guy that came right to him was his son. He was running along with him, and he is a sheriff's deputy over in Lexington County. But his father had come down from West Virginia to run, but he'd been training to do this for a good while. He was in his late 60s. And he just stayed there on the ground, and I, you know, was talking to the ambulance about coming and transporting him if necessary. Well, they came, and they did load him up. And by that time, he was doing so much better, he convinced them that he should get out and walk across the finish line, and he did. So he was fine. But you never know what may happen, but it's nice to have. There's so many locations on that route. Like mine, you couldn't see any other responders. I mean, I saw the runners coming by, but I was far enough away from the post to my left and the post to my right, the way the road curved and in the woods, that, you know, the spot I was in really would have been a blind spot. They might not have seen him fall if someone had not been there. Then I went to the Peach Festival, and I was just handing out flyers about how to prepare for an emergency ahead of time, as far as what supplies you should have in your house. You know, you should have so much water and on and on. And somebody ran over the tent and said, a young boy's just falling down over here, come over here. And I went over, and by that time he was sitting up. And I talked with him, and I checked his pupils, and they were the same. And you know, I couldn't see anything I really needed to do for him, but the EMS came up, and they decided they should take him to the hospital. And you know, I have heard of cases like that being the first instance of a person developing epilepsy, for instance. I mean, he was young. It was just usually young people don't just walking along and suddenly collapse like that. He did what you might call faint, you know, faint. But he didn't hit his head, he didn't injure anything. But you know, I had to write up a report on both of those, and it just happened to be that I was in the right spot. I don't know how that seems to happen to me so much. I know when I was coroner, I drove up on many things before I was ever called. I drove up on several fatal accidents. I think at least 5 that I remember that I drove up to the scene before I was ever called to come to the scene. I mean, how many people?
That's unusual.
That is. You know, and one of them, I heard on a guy on the radio, Billy Tabor with the sheriff's department, was calling for help. A man was trapped in a burning car on Gardensville Road, and he was trying to keep traffic from coming over Harlow Hill from hitting the car. And so I radioed Billy back and said, I'll be there in about 3 minutes. So when I got to the front of the car, there'd been a head-on collision. The car crossed over the median and hit this car head-on. The front of the car was burning. It was, you know, it gets bigger and bigger, and it burns back, and then it burns into the car and burns the car. It doesn't usually just explode like you see in movies, but I mean, it can happen or not. It doesn't happen. I wasn't really worried about it exploding, but I crawled into the car and felt that he was loose, and I could get him out, and I called to a man standing about 50 feet away and said, "Sir, would you come give me a hand?" And he did. And we lifted him out and got him up on the bank next to the girl who was traveling with him, who was already on the bank. She was fine. But he was the driver. Most of the impact was on his side, and he was dead. But he was a senior at USC, and he was a foreign student here visiting us from Germany. And his family, just coincidentally, I ran into an old friend of mine that I had seen in about 20 years. And we've been real happy to get back together. He's a volunteer sheriff's deputy over here, and he's brought this case up to me. He said, "Frank, do you remember that young man from Germany who was killed on an accident over on Gardensville Road?" And I said, "Sure, I remember." He said, "Well, he was living with us while he was going to college." I said, "I had forgotten that, Tim." That's right. He said, "I just want to tell you that his parents were so grateful that his body was not burned. If he had left it in the car, you know, another minute or two, his body would have burned up. They wouldn't have been able to see him." And, you know, that doesn't bring you back. You know, the loss is just as great, but it was a little consolation to them that they got to see their son again, you know. And so the little things that you do, all the little things you do that add up, that can help. Anyway, I'm looking for a good speaker to come here and talk to you.